Hello and welcome to day 181 in the Not Alone Today chronological Bible reading plan. Today we are in 2 Chronicles chapter 33 from verse 1 all the way to chapter 35 verse 19, and we are still in the Christian Standard Bible.
Chapter 33. Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight, imitating the detestable practices of the nations that the Lord had dispossessed before the Israelites. He rebuilt the high places that his father Hezekiah torn down and reestablished the altars for the Baals. He made Asherah poles, and he bowed in worship to all the stars in the sky and served them. He built altars in the Lord's temple, where the Lord had said, "Jerusalem is where my name will remain forever." He built altars to the stars in the sky in both courtyards of the Lord's temple. He passed his sons through the fire in Ben Hinnom Valley. He practiced witchcraft, divination, and sorcery, and consulted mediums and spiritists. He did a huge amount of evil in the Lord's sight, angering him.
Manasseh set up a carved image of the idol which he had made in God's temple that God had spoken about to David and his son Solomon. "I will establish my name forever in this temple and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. I will never again remove the feet of the Israelites from the land where I stationed your ancestors, if only they will be careful to do all I have commanded them through Moses, all the law, statutes, and judgments." So Manasseh caused Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem to stray, so that they did worse evil than the nations the Lord had destroyed before the Israelites.
The Lord spoke to Manasseh and his people, but they didn't listen. So he brought against them the military commanders of the king of Assyria. They captured Manasseh with hooks and bound him with bronze shackles and took him to Babylon. When he was in distress, he sought the favor of the Lord his God and earnestly humbled himself before the God of his ancestors. He prayed to him, and the Lord was receptive to his prayer. He granted his request and brought him back to Jerusalem, to his kingdom. So Manasseh came to know that the Lord is God.
After this, he built the outer wall of the city of David from west of Gihon in the valley to the entrance of the fish gate. He brought it around Ophel, and he heightened it considerably. He also placed military commanders in all the fortified cities of Judah.
He removed the foreign gods and the idols from the Lord's temple, along with all the altars that he had built on the mountain of the Lord's temple and in Jerusalem, and he threw them outside the city. He built the altar of the Lord and offered fellowship and thanksgiving sacrifices on it. Then he told Judah to serve the Lord, the God of Israel. However, the people still sacrificed at the high places, but only to the Lord their God.
The rest of the events of Manasseh's reign, along with his prayer to his God and the words of the seers who spoke to him in the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, are written in the events of Israel's kings. His prayer and how God was receptive to his prayer, and all his sin and unfaithfulness, and the sites where he built high places and set up Asherah poles and carved images before he humbled himself. They are written in the events of Uzziah. Manasseh rested with his ancestors, and he was buried in his own house. His son Amon became king in his place.
Amon was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as his father Manasseh had done. Amon sacrificed to all the carved images that his father Manasseh had made, and he served them. But he did not humble himself before the Lord like his father Manasseh humbled himself. Instead, Amon increased his guilt.
So his servants conspired against him and put him to death in his own house. The common people killed all who had conspired against King Amon and made his son Josiah king in his place.
Chapter 34. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king. He reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. He did what was right in the Lord's sight and walked in the ways of his ancestor David. He did not turn aside to the right or the left.
In the 8th year of his reign, while he was still a youth, Josiah began to seek the God of his ancestor David. And in the 12th year, he began to cleanse Judah and Jerusalem of the high places, the Asherah poles, the carved images, and the cast images. Then in his presence the altars of the Baals were torn down, and he chopped down the shrines that were above them. He shattered the Asherah poles, the carved images, and the cast images, crushed them to dust, and scattered them over the graves of those who had sacrificed to them. He burned the bones of the priests on their altars. So he cleansed Judah and Jerusalem. He did the same in the cities of Manasseh, Ephraim, and Simeon, and as far as Naphtali, and on their surrounding mountain shrines. He tore down the altars, and he smashed the Asherah poles and the carved images to powder. He chopped down all the shrines throughout the land of Israel, and returned to Jerusalem.
In the 18th year of his reign, in order to cleanse the land and the temple, Josiah sent Shaphan, son of Azaliah, along with Maaseiah, the governor of the city, and the court historian Joah, son of Jehoahaz, to repair the temple of the Lord his God.
So they went to the high priest Hilkiah and gave him the silver brought into God's temple. The Levites and the doorkeepers had collected it from Manasseh, Ephraim, and from the entire remnant of Israel, and from all Judah, Benjamin, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. They gave it to those doing the work, those who oversaw the Lord's temple. They gave it to the workmen who were working in the Lord's temple to repair and restore the temple. They gave it to the carpenters and builders, and also used it to buy quarried stone and timbers for joining and making beams for the buildings that Judah's kings had destroyed.
The men were doing the work with integrity. Their overseers were Jahath and Obadiah, Levites from the Merarites, and Zechariah and Meshullam from the Kohathites as supervisors. The Levites were all skilled with musical instruments. They were also over the porters and were supervising all those doing the work task by task. Some of the Levites were secretaries, officers, and gatekeepers.
When they brought out the silver that had been deposited in the Lord's temple, the priest Hilkiah found the book of the law of the Lord written by the hand of Moses. Consequently, Hilkiah told the court secretary Shaphan, "I have found the book of the law in the Lord's temple." And he gave the book to Shaphan.
Shaphan took the book to the king and also reported, "Your servants are doing all that was placed in their hands. They have emptied out the silver that was found in the Lord's temple and have given it to the overseers and to those doing the work." Then the court secretary Shaphan told the king, "The priest Hilkiah gave me a book," and Shaphan read from it in the presence of the king.
When the king heard the words of the law, he tore his clothes. Then he commanded Hilkiah, Ahikam, son of Shaphan, Abdon, son of Micah, the court secretary Shaphan, and the king's servant Asahiah, "Go and inquire of the Lord for me and for those remaining in Israel and Judah concerning the words of the book that was found. For great is the Lord's wrath that is poured out on us, because our ancestors have not kept the word of the Lord in order to do everything written in this book."
So Hilkiah and those the king had designated went to the prophetess Huldah, the wife of Shallum, son of Tokath, son of Asrah, keeper of the wardrobe. She lived in Jerusalem in the 2nd district. They spoke with her about this.
She said to them, "This is what the Lord God of Israel says. Say to the man who sent you to me, this is what the Lord says. I am about to bring disaster on this place and on its inhabitants, fulfilling all the curses written in the book that they read in the presence of the king of Judah, because they have abandoned me and burned incense to other gods, so as to anger me with all the works of their hands. My wrath will be poured out on this place, and it will not be quenched. Say this to the king of Judah who sent you to inquire of the Lord. This is what the Lord God of Israel says. As for the words that you heard, because your heart was tender and you humbled yourself before God when you heard his words against this place and against its inhabitants, and because you humbled yourself before me and you tore your clothes and wept before me, I myself have heard. This is the Lord's declaration. I will indeed gather you to your ancestors, and you'll be gathered to your grave in peace. Your eyes will not see all the disaster that I am bringing on this place and on its inhabitants."
Then they reported to the king.
So the king sent messengers and gathered all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem. The king went up to the Lord's temple with all the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, as well as the priests and the Levites. all the people from the oldest to the youngest. He read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant that had been found in the Lord's temple. Then the king stood at his post and made a covenant in the Lord's presence to follow the Lord and to keep his commands, his decrees, and his statutes with all his heart and with all his soul, in order to carry out the words of the covenant written in this book.
He had all those present in Jerusalem and Benjamin agreed to it. So all the inhabitants of Jerusalem carried out the covenant of God, the God of their ancestors.
So Josiah removed everything that was detestable from all the lands belonging to the Israelites, and he required all who were present in Israel to serve the Lord their God. Throughout his reign, they did not turn aside from following the Lord, the God of their ancestors.
Chapter 35. Josiah observed the Lord's Passover and slaughtered the Passover lambs on the 14th day of the first month. He appointed the priests to their responsibilities and encouraged them to serve in the Lord's temple. He said to the Levites who taught all Israel the holy things of the Lord, "Put the holy ark in the temple built by Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, since you do not have to carry it on your shoulders. Now serve the Lord your God and his people Israel."
Organize your ancestral families by your divisions according to the written instruction of King David of Israel and that of his son Solomon. Serve in the holy place by the groupings of the ancestral families for your brothers, the lay people, and according to the division of the Levites by family. Slaughter the Passover lambs, consecrate yourselves, and make preparations for your brothers to carry out the word of the Lord through Moses.
Then Josiah donated 30,000 sheep, lamb, and young goats, plus 3,000 cattle from his own possessions for the Passover sacrifices for all the lay people who were present.
His officials also donated willingly for the people, the priests, and the Levites. Hilkiah, Zechariah, and Jehiel, chief officials of God's temple, gave 2,600 Passover sacrifices and 300 cattle for the priests. Conaniah and his brothers Shemaiah and Nethanel and Ashabiah, Jael and Jozabad, officers of the Levites, donated 5,000 Passover sacrifices for the Levites, plus 500 cattle.
So the service was established. The priests stood at their posts and the Levites in their divisions, according to the king's command. Then they slaughtered the Passover lambs, and while the Levites were skinning the animals, the priests splattered the blood they had been given. They removed the burnt offerings so that they might be given to the groupings of the ancestral families of the lay people to offer to the Lord, according to what was written in the book of Moses. They did the same with the cattle. They roasted the Passover lambs with fire, according to regulation. They boiled the holy sacrifices in pots, kettles, and bowls, and they quickly brought them to the lay people. Afterwards, they made preparations for themselves and for the priests, since the priests, the descendants of Aaron, were busy offering up burnt offerings and fat until night. So the Levites made preparations for them and for the priests, the descendants of Aaron.
The singers, the descendants of Asaph, were at their stations according to the command of David, Asaph, Eman, and Jeduthun, the king's seer. Also the gatekeepers were at each temple gate. None of them left their tasks because their Levite brothers had made preparations for them.
So all the service of the Lord was established that day for observing the Passover and for offering burnt offering on the altar of the Lord. According to the command of King Josiah, the Israelites who were present in Judah also observed the Passover at that time and the festival of unleavened bread for 7 days. No Passover had been observed like it in Israel since the days of the prophet Samuel. None of the kings of Israel ever observed a Passover like the one that Josiah observed with the priests, the Levites, all Judah, the Israelites were present in Judah, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. In the 18th year of Josiah's reign, this Passover was observed. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. So today we read 3 chapters from 2 Chronicles 33 to see the Chronicles version of the accounts of the reign of Manasseh, of Ammon, and of Josiah. And we've read this before in 2 Kings, But looking at Second Chronicles, we can see in the story of Manasseh an added detail about Manasseh's repentance. This was not mentioned in Second King. And then the story of Ammon, Manasseh's son, followed, who reigned for 2 years and was killed. And then Josiah, his son, reigned in his place. And again, we have a comprehensive, detailed account of the reforms of Josiah, just as we read yesterday from the book of Second Kings. And that's what we read today. We'll go back to spotlight the few things that stood out to us. In Second Chronicles 33, Anu, what stood out to you?
The story of Manasseh in Chronicles is quite interesting. When we read Second Kings, we didn't read about him humbling himself and praying. We just read that after his father Hezekiah died and did all of the things he did, that Manasseh undid everything that his father did, and he did evil. This part of him being captured by the king of Assyria in oaks and bronze shackles and being taken to Babylon was not in that account. All that he sought the Lord and earnestly humbled himself. All that he removed foreign gods. So I was quite like, how? Why is Second Kings not saying all of this? Because all we read of Manasseh in Second Kings was that he did evil, and that his son after him, Ammon, did evil. And if we read this chapter 33, verse 21, verse 22, we will read that Ammon, his son, did evil in the Lord's sight, just as his father did, which is resonant with the Second Kings account. But then in verse 23, that Ammon did not humble himself to God like Manasseh did.
I mean, fair enough. They both cited their sources, which clarifies this. So the chronicler cited at the end to say all the events of Manasseh's reign, they are written in the events of Uzziah. And these events of Uzziah, or in the NKJV it says the sayings of Uzziah, that source was not cited for the Second Kings accounts. They just said they were recorded in the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel or something like that. So there is another source that the person that is writing this aspect of Second Chronicles is citing that apparently contains this version of events that we did not see in Second Kings. But yeah, that's quite interesting. I never imagined Manasseh as someone that repented. Well, it's good to have all these different sides to the story. So same thing stood out to me, basically. Second Chronicles 34, what stood out to you?
Then in 34, what stood out to me was how that King Josiah was a team player. So he didn't just do all this work himself. So for sometimes, bear with me, I'm coming to a head. Sometimes when we receive instructions from God, we think we have to bear the burden of all the carrying out of it. But most times we fail to ask him again, who will do this work with me? And Josiah did delegate work to people. So even though it started when he was 8 years old, and that while he was still a youth he began to seek God, once he found out about what God had said, he then sent Shaphnah, Maaseiah, and Johor to repair the temple of the Lord. He didn't even act as their overseer or supervisors. Supervisors and overseers were now appointed for that role, while Josiah kept being king. And that stood out to me, in that we don't have to burn out in ministry. When you've been given the baton and you've been given a chart on where to go, there is still room to ask, am I running alone? Who do I hand this baton to? Is it just me? And once we get, even if it's just us, once we're weary during the journey, we can still ask God, can you send me support? Can you send me people who would help me and lift my hands up, like Aaron and Ora did for Moses when Joshua was fighting battle in Joshua's time. Yeah, that's what stood out to me, that he was a good team player.
Indeed.
And that word Josiah sent in verse 8 kept ringing in my head whilst we're reading.
For me, it's the youthfulness of Josiah in all of this. Like, it's easy to skip on the fact that this was still him being young. He started when he was in the 8th year of his reign. He would be 16 years old. And then in the 18th year of his reign, when they had that massive Passover, he was just 26 years old. And at that very youthful young age, he did all of this and made all these delegations. I mean, it's just striking to say we don't want to waste our youths in that sense. Yeah. And the other thing that stood out to me in that chapter actually is the other detail in verse 21. Go and inquire of the Lord for me and for those remaining in Israel and Judah concerning the works of the book that was found. So he recognized the fact that what was in the book is not just about them in Judah. It also covers for all of Israel. And there is a remnant, even though the northern kingdom had been taken into captivity, there are still a remnant in that part of the kingdom. And so that's why he would go on to Bethel eventually, to also destroy the altars in Bethel and in other regions around even the northern kingdom of Israel. So yeah, I just saw that detail and it put into perspective some of the questions I had from yesterday's reading. Yeah. Chapter 35, what stood out to you?
When we were reading 35, I found that there were additional details that wasn't in 2 Kings 23 regarding the sacrifices that was done. So when we're reading Numbers and Deuteronomy, I didn't read that they said they should boil the sacrifices. Did you? I read about roasting, but not the boiling part. So that stood out to me. Especially in verse 13 of this, of 2 Chronicles 35, when they said, they boiled the holy sacrifices in pots, kettles, and bowls, and they quickly brought them to the lay people. That I can't remember reading that the sacrifices were meant to be given to the lay people. And the word lay people has been repeated in this chapter, which I found curious as well. What about you?
Yeah, for me, again, it's another, not a major discrepancy, but another slight difference from what we read in yesterday's account in 2 Kings. They said in verse 18, no Passover had been observed like it in Israel since the days of the prophet Samuel. Whereas yesterday we were told since the time of the judges. Anyway, Samuel was the last judge. So, okay, in some sense, it's still correct. So, yeah. So. But yeah, it's just striking that since the days of Samuel, in other words, leading on throughout the entire of the period of the kings until Josiah, there had never been such an observance of the Passover. It's just quite alarming, really. And it shows the justification for the judgment that God brings upon them. When we read all these minor prophets and the prophecies of the major prophets, we can have questions like, God, why would you do this to all these people? But then they've abandoned literally his word for centuries, to the point where the temple that was built to worship him has become the same place where other abominations were being committed. And so yeah, it's just quite striking. We'll continue again when we flip the page tomorrow. We will be going into the Psalms to continue and see some Psalms that were written about this period, or at least as best as Bible scholars believe they were. But till then, just remember,
you're not alone
today. God bless you.